Welcome back again, everyone, to the Fawn Pod, the Fawn Cast. It's friends occasionally not disagreeing. This is Cody, and I'm here with another mini episode on my continuing summer watch through of the James Bond films. Doing a classic or crap series here. If you haven't joined us on the first two, we went through Dr. No and From Russia with Love. Today, we're taking a look at Goldfinger. Wow. This is one of the iconic classic themes. We'll get to that in just a second. But continuing our way that we're checking through these this summer, our ranking system here for me, I have title, theme, Bond portrayal and performance, the Bond women, the villains, the plot, the action, and my favorite line of the film. So far, we've had two films both rank as classics, although Dr. No film was just at the edge of classic versus crap. We'll see how Goldfinger holds up as we watch through this one today, or talk about it, at least, I guess, as it were. Again, if you're new to us, you can check out Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing on all your favorite social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We're also available everywhere you stream your podcasts: Audible, Amazon, oh my gosh, Pandora, Spotify, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. And you can also check out Fond Podcast, FONDPODCAST.com to go to our headquarters. You can also order your favorite Fond merchandise if you're a true fondling or fondler out there, one of our mega fans. All right, let's get into it here. So we are still having Sean Connery as James Bond here in movie number 3. I should point out we have one more film after this, Thunderball, which we'll watch next. And then we're going to get one of those bizarro entries that are not officially part of the Eon canon with Casino Royale. This is not the Daniel Craig version from 2006. This is the 1967 version, Casino Royale, when they are having other people adapt Bond stories. And I've never seen that film for sure, along with a lot of these ones coming up next. So we will see what that's all about. I know it's a very different take on the franchise, but we'll take a look at that. Okay, so Connery's back. Let's take a look at this. We'll start off with our title, Goldfinger. It's very simple. At this point, we've been introduced to James Bond already through a couple films here. You know, I mentioned in the first review for Dr. No, I kind of wish that movie maybe had been called James Bond or something more insinuating the star of the series rather than the villain of the first film. But at this point, he's been established. I like it. It's very, simple. It's iconic, and it also tells you who the villain in this film is. So I'm going to give it a full 5 out of 5 points for Goldfinger. The theme in this one, and then we'll talk about the movie. The theme is, in my opinion, and I'm positive we will have an episode where we argue about all these in the future, but in my opinion, and probably I would guess most people's opinions, Shirley Bassey, who sings the theme to this and another movie coming up here, she just has the iconic Bond voice, in my opinion. I don't know how you can say many of these other songs are on par. That's not to say I don't enjoy some of these other songs maybe just as much, which we will talk about when we eventually do that podcast. But the Goldfinger theme is so iconic. Her voice and the vocals and just that in the background, Goldfinger. Lyrics are very simple, but she just has this wonderful bellow quality to her voice. 10 out of 10 for theme. That's fantastic. Not many of the movies have a theme as good as that. Okay, then to the 5 categories about the actual movie here, where we get the bulk of our points for our rating. 85 points here, divided between these 5. We'll start with James Bond's portrayal. We get a mixed bag here in a way, and that is, this is the 3rd film for Connery. He's pretty familiar with the character, very comfortable with the character. Behind the scenes, I was reading here, and I think it does come through maybe a smidge. We have Sean Connery, who was not real excited that Bond took off as big as it did, because when he became mega popular after the first 2 films in Britain, and then this one, Goldfinger, and even into the next one, I gather from what I read, Thunderball, That's when he becomes mega popular in the United States as well. And they did a really smart thing here, which was make the focal piece of the climax scene in this movie, the last big set piece at Fort Knox, a very American affair. And that was in a location that was really intriguing to the world at the time, what was hidden at Fort Knox. I'm getting into the plot a little bit here, but my point being, America now loved James Bond as well as Britain after this film. And the problem it causes is that Sean Connery was even more tied to making these movies, which I read behind the scenes, he made two movies in between Bond films before this one. And then he had to start turning things down that would have been some more iconic roles because they were churning out a Bond film about every year at this point. Okay. Um, in addition to all of what's going on behind the scenes, on screen, Bond is given far less to do in this movie than he is in some of the other ones. And part of that is because they shifted the philosophy here behind the scenes, which was in the first film or two, not knowing this was going to be a long running franchise, there was a danger of would Bond escape this situation, which is always, the problem with the spy action hero. Is he good to get out of this? Is he good to win, etc.? Here by movie three, they were kind of smart in a way in that they said to the audience, well, he's not going to be shot. He's not going to die in this scene halfway through the movie. And so, how do we maintain an interesting movie if that's the case? If our hero is in no real danger of, dying or leaving or losing, how do we make an interesting movie? And what they decided to do was spend more time on the villains. Okay. And I always equate a lot of these movie ideas to the MCU because we talk about that so much. And some of the more interesting MCU movies are the ones that they focus more on the villains, because that's always a complaint there as well. As with here, you can't have a generic villain that we don't either A, know about, B, care about, C, don't know their motivation, D, don't get a lot of screen time, whatever. So they put more story here into Auric Goldfinger's um, performance and his story, I guess. So Bond is not, I don't think, as strong in this one as he was in the last one. I'm going to give him a 12 out of 15 on this one for his portrayal, Sean Connery's. I just didn't feel like he did as much or really showed the depth of the character as much in this one as he did in the last film. Okay, 12 out of 15. Bond women in this movie. So I've been rating these on the main lady. Okay. We do get some side women in this one as well. We have Jill Masterson, who is maybe of all of the people that appeared in a Bond film, arguably the most iconic. Maybe Ursula Andress probably could give her a run for the money with the swimsuit bikini, etc. But she is the woman who was painted in gold paint. She's the character, I guess, who is painted in gold paint by Goldfinger and his henchmen. And that's kind of that iconic scene, which I believe launches into the theme song, if I'm remembering how that played out correctly now. But she's only there for a little bit. She's the one who was helping Goldfinger cheat at cards at the beginning. Then we get a little bit of the movie with Jill's sister, Tilly Masterson, who at first appears to be trying to shoot Bond, but we come to find out that she's actually trying to shoot Goldfinger for killing her sister. She's in the movie for a little bit, and then Odd Job, we'll talk about in a second, the iconic henchman, kills her. And so she's out of the movie. So then the third lady here, Bond basically spends his time with, is the, famously named Pussy Galore, which we're talking in the first episode about some problematic things in this series for 2023. A character named Pussy Galore was problems for censors back in the 1960s as well. They found some creative workarounds to keep that in the film, as it were. So I guess I have to rate most of these points, these 15 points, on her character. She's pretty straight-laced in this film. She is played by Honor Blackman, who is pretty good looking, not as gorgeous, I don't think, as the last movie. But we have a character who is pretty loyal to Goldfinger for the first chunk of the film that she is in. Um, Basically doing this for money. She has a flying act that she has 5 other women pilots employed for, and they're all going to help Oddjob in his big, not Oddjob, sorry, Goldfinger in his big attack on Fort Knox at the end here. We do come to find out later on that she has been swayed by Bond in the hay, with the role in the hay, if you will. And she turns on him at the end, but she's not really featured necessarily in the whole movie, A. And B, I don't know that I don't know that we see real chemistry between the two either, other than when Bond kind of pushes himself on her in the hay. She's not necessarily a really interesting character. We don't know a ton about her other than she is a capable female pilot, and she says she wants to buy an island in the Bahamas when she's done. So overall, mostly scoring this on Pussy's performance, Honor Blackman's performance. I'm going to give the women in this film a 10 out of 15 for what they achieved and represented, I guess. 10 out of 15. Villains in this movie for 10 points. Well, we have an interesting departure here. We were introduced to Spectre in the first film, Dr. No, as the criminal organization against MI6. We were introduced in the hierarchy of Spectre in the last movie, From Russia with Love, with number 1, number 3, and number 5. And then in this movie, it's kind of interesting. They don't have Spectre. Auric Goldfinger is not a member of Spectre that we know, at least from the film. He has kind of world domination slash get rich type plans instead. He's kind of independent financer. He is a gold smuggler, which is used to decent effect in this movie. And then we also have Oddjob, who is one of, at least in my mind here very quickly, 2 iconic Bond henchmen. This one is the Asian guy in the suit. You might have seen him. He's a little bit shorter. He has the hat that he can throw that has the metal brim that's capable of chopping off statue heads and people as well. He's super strong, basically impervious to pain for the most part. But he does get electrified by Bond, and that's finally what kills him at the end here in Fort Knox during the big set piece there. Goldfinger's motivation is, I believe, being paid by a foreign government for putting radioactive bomb debris, or whatever you want to call it, radioactive materials, I guess, onto the gold supply in the United States, and basically poisoning the country from the inside out, I suppose, is what we're going for here. Oddjob's pretty sweet. I'm going to give the villains in this movie a 9 out of 10. Good stuff. Okay, on to the plot of the movie. So I really, really liked the plot in From Russia with Love. And if I'm being honest, I felt like this movie was lacking. We get the kind of, I don't know, almost tropey-like invasion of Fort Knox here. And I know, again, this is the 60s, and I have to remember that when I'm viewing the lens of these in 2023, what we think of as like a cliche, plot for a spy movie now wasn't perhaps in 1964 when Goldfinger came out. But essentially, we get Bond watching Goldfinger play cards. We get Bond playing golf with Goldfinger. We get Bond chasing Goldfinger and spying on him the entire movie in Switzerland, I believe, in this one. And then we get Bond being captured and kind of just with the villains for the rest of the film. Up to the Fort Knox piece where we get all sorts of things happening. We get the gas is sprayed by the female pilots over top of everything in Fort Knox. All the soldiers are knocked out. Bond is handcuffed to the bomb inside Fort Knox. And inside, we find that the door gets shut to the vault, and Bond gets locked inside with Oddjob and a couple random soldiers, which is going to lead to the Oddjob Bond fight finally. And as mentioned here, it's pretty good tussle between the two. Odd Job and Bond. Bond basically can't hurt Odd Job because he's impervious to so many things. And then Odd Job throws his hat at Bond, misses, gets stuck in some. No, I take that back. I think Bond actually threw the hat and it gets stuck in the metal bars. And then Odd Job grabs for the hat to try to get it out. And Bond uses the cord that had been cut by the hat to electrocute Odd Job. And that's how he goes down. We find out afterwards that Pussy Galore had traded sides and they were actually spraying inert gas that she had switched out. So all of Fort Knox, if you can believe this, all of Fort Knox, all of the soldiers there, 41,000, I believe Goldfinger said, were acting like they were passed out, including Bond's buddies that are there on the scene as well. And they all wake up and then they basically start to fight Goldfinger's troops. Defeat them. Goldfinger escapes, and bomb is disarmed iconically at 007 on the timer as Bond just about yanks the wrong cord, and his friend happens to make it down to the bottom of the vault, somehow going down like 4 flights of stairs in like 3 seconds, but we'll just let that go. And bomb's disarmed, and similar to the last movie, the big set piece is not the end of the movie as we get Bond going on a plane to meet the president. And instead, we find out that Pussy Galore is on the plane flying it, and Goldfinger is also on the plane. So we get one last fight between Goldfinger and Bond. Gun goes off, window breaks, Goldfinger is sucked out through the window. Bond and Pussy Galore's plane goes down, and they are ejected, I guess, at the last second with a parachute, it looks like, although I read online that that's probably not possible with a jet because you'd just be sucked back into the side of the jet even if you had a parachute. So that is where they don't find them actually at the end of the movie. Bond ends the third consecutive movie making love here to a lady as the credits roll under a parachute in this case. So not on a boat. We broke that streak. But there's that. So I don't know. It just felt like there wasn't a lot of plot to this. It was like a bad guy's idea to take over Fort Knox. But I think it was really lowered a few points because Bond is with the villain for like half the movie. And the first half of the movie, he's just like constantly surveilling this guy. So I didn't necessarily find it all that great. I'm going to give it only a 15 out of 30 on this. Just didn't find this to be a great plot of this movie. There were times where I kind of felt my attention wandering. Wasn't at all like the last one, which was this really tight spy train thriller. This one was kind of the big heist movie, but it contained none of the good things that a good heist movie would have. 15 out of 30. Action in the movie, I just covered a lot of that with the plot review. Bond's given some stuff to do here. We do get a couple shots fired here and there. A little bit of hand-to-hand combat here, and we get the iconic laser scene. I didn't mention that with the "Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die," which is a fantastic line as well. Trying to think what else in this one. Also didn't mention Goldfinger's iconic study or whatever you want to call the room. He has all the gangs from the East, West, and Chicago in with all the things that transform and the model of Fort Knox that comes up to the table and the pool table that flips into a command center, etc. All pretty cool. So action in this movie was pretty decent. Could have been a little more, I think, especially from Bond himself. So 10 out of 15 on action on this one. And then favorite line in this film, there were a lot of good ones. There is the iconic, "Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die." There are numerous low-hanging fruit with the character Pussy Galore, which I'm not going to take because that would just be too easy. So I'm actually going to pick one from towards the end of the film here. This is when Bond is about to hop on the plane to supposedly go visit the president, and he's talking to his friend, and his friend says to him, and I quote, "I told the stewardess, liquor for 3." And then Bond said, "Oh, who were the other two?" implying flying with me. And then his friend Felix says, "Oh, there are no other two." Just meaning he has alcohol for 3 people's worth for James Bond, which I think is just good line. Good line. Okay, all that is to say, adding up here for Goldfinger, we have 5, 10, 12, 10, 9, 15, and 10, 56, 66, 71 is my official score for Goldfinger. 71. So this is going to be classic, but only by a point or two. This is just a point ahead of Dr. No, but definitely worse than From Russia with Love, the last film that I reviewed. All right, so that is Goldfinger. Now I'm super curious because I know from this point on, I don't know if I have seen the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I don't know if I have seen the next 15 Bond movies. Excuse me. In line here. So I know the latter ones I have seen a lot of, but this will be really interesting for me now. So I got 15 more coming your way on this next section that I have never seen before. And I don't even know if I've seen all of Goldfinger before having watched it. I might have at some point, but that's where I'm at. So 15 more to go through there, including, as I mentioned, the couple Eon, I don't know how you say the word, EON, canon films here, Casino Royale and the Never Say Never Again film when they decide to bring Connery back in the 80s. That'll be interesting too. So, okay. Well, I think that's going to do us on this little mini one here. We have kind of a wackadoo schedule coming your way for the summertime here as we got a couple reviews headed your way. And I think maybe there are some discussions for some more mini episodes, possibly by some other hosts as well. So we'll see if those materialize as we go on. Till then, everybody, check us out again. This is Fond Podcast or the Fond Pod or the Fondcast. Call us what you will. You can see us tonight. Actually, as this drops, you can see us tonight on TBS for AEW Dynamite. We'll be in row 2. Check for our sign on that. We'll have the old Fond Podcast sign on national TV yet again, but never as prominently featured as tonight. All right, everybody, take care. This has been Cody. Another episode of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing.